At 66 years old, James Parker had learned to embrace solitude. After losing his wife a decade ago, he had poured his energy into his children, his work, and later, his peaceful retirement. He had built a life of routine, morning walks, reading newspapers, occasional dinners with old friends, but lately, he had started to feel something missing. It wasn't about being lonely, it was about companionship. Someone to share laughter with, to talk about the little things that made life meaningful. Someone to sit beside him on a quiet Sunday morning, sipping coffee and enjoying the simple presence of another soul. Encouraged by his closest friend, Mark, James hesitantly stepped into the world of dating again. It felt strange. So much had changed since the last time he had pursued romance. But when he met Linda, a 55-year-old retired teacher, through a mutual friend, something about her warmth and energy intrigued him. After several engaging phone calls, they decided to meet in person. James hadn't been this nervous in years. He picked a nice cafe downtown, dressed in a crisp blazer, and arrived 10 minutes early, scanning the room with anticipation. Then he saw her. Linda walked in with confidence, her auburn hair gently curled, her eyes scanning the cafe until they landed on him. A warm smile spread across her face as she approached the table. "James!" He stood up, offering his hand, which she playfully waved off. "We're not doing that formal handshake thing, are we?" She chuckled before giving him a light hug. James laughed, already feeling more at ease. Maybe this was the start of something good. A perfect start. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about their shared love of history, their favorite travel destinations, and the joys and oddities of retirement. James found himself smiling more than he had in a long time. Linda was intelligent, witty, and refreshingly direct. "Do you ever miss working?" she asked, sipping her coffee. "Not really," James admitted. "I miss the people, the routine sometimes. But mostly I enjoy the freedom. No deadlines, no meetings, just time to do things I love." She nodded. "I feel the same way. Retirement is our time to enjoy life on our terms." That sentence sat well with James. Maybe they were more alike than he thought. But then, as the conversation shifted towards the idea of companionship, Linda placed her cup down and leaned in slightly. "James," she said, "I've really enjoyed our talk. But before we go any further, I need to be honest. I have 4 non-negotiable conditions for any relationship at this stage in my life." James straightened. "For conditions?" He wasn't expecting this. "All right," he said, curious but cautious. "I'm listening." "The 4 conditions." Linda smiled, but her tone was firm. 1. I don't want a man with too much emotional baggage. She looked him in the eyes. "We all have a past. But I don't want to be with someone who constantly brings up their late spouse or past relationships. If a person is still emotionally tied to someone else, they're not fully available for something new. 2. Financial independence is a must." Linda folded her hands. "I've worked hard for my retirement, and I want to keep my finances separate. I'm not looking to share expenses or support anyone. I want to enjoy my life without financial complications." James understood this. He had always been financially responsible. But still, relationships were about sharing life, not just dividing it into separate pieces. 3. No close ties with exes or former in-laws. She exhaled. "I don't believe in holding on to past relationships, even if they were good ones. If we're moving forward, I expect a clean slate. No lingering connections with in-laws, no constant check-ins with old relationships." James felt his jaw tighten slightly. He was still close with his late wife's sister and some family members. They had become his family, too. Was he supposed to just cut them out? 4. I need complete freedom. She smiled again, but with an edge of seriousness. "I don't want a relationship that requires daily check-ins or shared schedules. I love my independence, and I want a partner who respects that." I want companionship, not obligation." James sat back, taking it all in. A moment of reflection. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. James carefully considered each of Linda's conditions. She was confident, she knew exactly what she wanted, and she had every right to set her own boundaries. He respected that, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized something deeply important. He wanted something different. His past wasn't baggage, it was a part of him. He would never forget the love he once had, and he didn't want to be with someone who saw memories as a burden. His financial independence was never an issue, but he didn't see love as a purely separate arrangement. He wanted to build something together, not just exist alongside someone. And most of all, he cherished the people in his life, his family, his late wife's family, his lifelong friendships. If being with Linda meant letting all of that go, then maybe she wasn't the right person for him. James exhaled, then smiled warmly. "Linda," he said, "I respect that you know exactly what you want, and I think that's a good thing." She tilted her head slightly, sensing where this was going. But he continued, "I think we may be walking different paths." Linda studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, James." They finished their coffee, exchanged a few more pleasantries, and parted ways on good terms. A new realization. That evening, James sat on his porch, watching the sunset with a newfound sense of clarity. He hadn't found love that day, but he had found something just as valuable, understanding what truly mattered to him. He wasn't looking for a relationship filled with restrictions and conditions. He wanted a real connection, something built on shared experiences, understanding, and mutual appreciation. And if that meant waiting a little longer, so be it. As the sky darkened, James smiled to himself. Sometimes, the best decisions aren't about what we gain, but about knowing what we refuse to lose. Moral of the story: love is not just about finding someone. It's about finding the right person who shares your values, respects your past, and walks beside you toward the future.